Welcome back to the Life of Phys Podcast, where we explore creativity, resilience, and the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Tyson Martin. Today's guest is Ryne Hancock, a New Orleans-based photographer known for documenting the heartbeat of the city, its neighborhoods, its history, and the everyday moments that give New Orleans its soul. You may know him from @Ryan Was Here or @Shots by Ryan, where he captures second-line parades, street culture, and the daily rhythm of life in the city. His work isn't about spectacle, it's about presence, about being there, being part of the community, and honoring the stories that live in the streets. And honoring the stories that live there. Ryan photographs New Orleans the way you feel New Orleans. The brass bands, the footwork, the color, the joy, the grief, the history, all alive, all moving. His images remind us that culture isn't something to observe from a distance, it's something you belong to. This conversation is about community storytelling, documenting culture with respect, and staying rooted in place. So let's get into it.
My name is Ryne Hancock. I am from Memphis, Tennessee originally, and I currently live in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Why don't you break into your backstory? Why don't you let us know a little bit about who you are and how your creativity sparked into this photographic journey that you're on now?
Well, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I was named after the late, great Ryne Sandberg, rest in glory, rest in power.
Cubs legend.
Yes, I'm a Cardinals fan. So, but my dad named me after, I was named for Ryne Sandberg. I sent him a letter right before he died. The week before he died, I sent him a letter. A letter just thanking him for being, my namesake. And he died a week after I sent him that letter. So I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up an only child. And basically what got me into doing photography is that my grandfather was a photographer for the Air Force. My grandfather served in Korea and Vietnam. He was a sergeant for 20 years. And when I was a kid, we had this big photo book. And it was photos of my mom and my grandmother and my family and my relatives. And he had pictures of him with his friends in the Air Force. He was stationed in places like New Jersey, South Carolina, He was stationed in Texas. He went overseas 6 times. And when we were moving out of the house I grew up in, I remember seeing all these pictures that he took. And as a kid, I collected baseball cards. So I used to always be like, oh, how did they get this shot? And how did they get that shot? And how did they get this shot? And when I was a kid in kindergarten, my teacher, Miss Batts, asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a photographer, because my grandfather had all these photographies, these pictures from his time over in, they would go to Alaska. It was just documenting life with a lens. And we had, the first camera I remember using as a kid was the one you remember at Walgreens. They had it looked like a little like roller, like you know which one I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So it's like they had one, it was like a film strip camera. It was like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like this little Walgreens camera that they had. It wasn't like a disposable camera, but they had 2 ends of it. It was like 2 ends. I have to like look it up but I remember that was the first camera I worked with. And that was about 30 some years ago. And in 2002, I got into photography as a photographer for the Teen Appeal, which was a paper in Memphis. It was a high school newspaper. And at the original time, my desire to do it was to meet girls. That was it. I mean, it was to meet girls. And
the drive of being an artist, right?
Yeah, it was to meet girls. And I was very awkward, okay? I was very awkward. Like now it's different. But in 2005, I started to do digital. I went from film to digital. I told people that I can remember going to Walgreens as a kid and dropping off film to be developed. I also remember, and I can say this now because it's been 23 years. I can also remember this dude named Vernon Rawls stealing film out of the Family Dollar near our house. I would give him $10. I said, go. He would get $10 from me. Because he was like this little short dude. It's about like 4'11", like 4'9", 4'8", like 10 years old. We used to call him Powder. He used to steal film out of Walgreens. He used to steal film out of Walgreens and stuff.
I don't know
So
if you can see that right there. I just shared on the screen. There's the
yeah, that's it
that's
right
the
there.
one. Yeah,
That's the one. That's the one right there.
yeah, the
If you
110.
zoom in, the one that the Kodak one, that was the one I first used.
Yeah,
So my mom used to take photos of my birthday parties. So it was like I wish we still had those pictures, but that was kind of like what I wanted to do, and it was just something I wanted to do, but it was not something I seeked out. It wasn't something that I seeked out doing. It was something that found me, basically.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think back to. I mean, I tell people I've been a photographer for 6 years. It was the year before COVID. I picked up a camera and it changed my life. But then I was thinking back into it further, and I'm like, well, I remember I used to play around with those 110 cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
Walk around the house with no film, still,
I
wind
did
film
too.
and
I
click
did
it so the
too.
flash would go off. Then I remember taking a photo course in junior high school. And I also remember going with my mom, and my mom had a really nice old Nikon film camera. And we would go to those little kiosks in the parking lots where you would drop it off, and they would take it, and you'd come back an hour later and they'd somehow magically developed it and it was ready to go. So it's interesting now, being a digital shooter, and I'd still dabble in film a little bit. I shoot with I have a Hasselblad 500, but it's so different now, right? It's so different. I like that. I guess I'm one of those people who likes that instant gratification. you know,
Mm-hmm.
I like being able to see my photos the same day, right away. So after you played around with these old school cameras, got into the mid 2000s, you really started capturing the style that you wanted. Do you think your style now is influenced by similar photos that you saw growing up from your grandfather?
I would say they are, and there was also the other thing of I would say Ernest Withers. He was such an influence on my photography. One of my favorite photos is one I took of these two girls. These two girls. We had these cheerleaders at AutoZone Park in Memphis, and it was a girl named Shanna Woods and Candace Eason. They were cheerleaders for the Redbirds, and this was 2005, and we're on the third base side of the ballpark, and they're right by this yellow little parking banister thing. They're in the alley of the third the little ballpark alley and on the third base side. And the quality of the photo, the way it came out, it was something that I saw. It was kind of inspired by a photo I remember seeing Ernest Withers do. Ernest Withers did photos for people in my family.
Oh, crazy.
He did photos for people in my family. And one of the things I remember doing was in 1997, I went to Pine Hill Golf Course. That's on the south side of the city in Memphis. And he saw my aunt Dot. And I always tell people, my Aunt Dot is basically what Lucy Van Pelt would be if she was a black woman. She'll tell you she tell you how she feels, and she has no problems doing it. She would have turned 101 on Wednesday. No, not Wednesday. Last Friday she would have turned 101. But Aunt Dot uh was did got some photos done by Ernest Withers. And he told me the best advice I can give you is to keep your camera in your pocket. That was the best advice he gave me. And I use that advice to this day. And I'm gonna tell you this before we go any further. The first camera I had, the first digital camera I had was a Vivitar camera that could fit your pocket. It was a small camera. And I remember paying like $59.99 for it. And I can remember, you know, I can remember having it in my pocket, and like, in those days you didn't have cell phone cameras. The cell phone cameras looked like crap. And the pictures that I took back in 2005, they still hold up today. And that's because of the whole digital thing, which is completely opposite of what my grandfather, because I still don't know what happened to those photos that my grandfather took, because my mom, I think, moved three other times. So I don't know whatever happened to those photos.
So that piece of history is now somewhere.
It's in the house, in my mom's house in Memphis, but I don't know where exactly in my mom's house.
That would be definitely a cool thing to get now and look back at it, as an adult, and look back into what you used to see growing up and being like, trying to tell the story from the photo.
Right. I think one thing that my dad's side of the family they really do a good job of documenting and preserving like the family history and stuff. Like, they do a good job of it.
Yeah,
We have the family reunions and stuff. So they really do a good job of that. And I commend my dad's side of the family for preserving stuff.
Thanks for mentioning Ernest Withers. I've never really followed his story.
Yes, he was like one of the first African American policemen in the city. He was the first African American policeman in the city of Memphis, and he documented things all throughout. Like, to do that, like, to be a person, like, it's sort of like the way I look at art is this: it's got to be generational. Generational. I think about something that Quincy Jones said. There was a family, and one generation had his stuff that he did with Frank Sinatra and Count Basie. Another generation had the stuff that he did with Michael Jackson, the Off the Wall album. And then another generation had his Back on the Block and Q's Juke Joint album. So art is something that's supposed to be generational. Like, when you have something that lasting art is something that's supposed to be generational, that is passed down like an heirloom. And Ernest Withers was like that heirloom that got passed down from this generation, the civil rights generation, to the Gen Xers, to the millennials, like the elder millennials like myself. We knew what he was in terms of like one of the anchors of Black Memphis history.
I brought him up to save him on my screen so I could do some research on him and get that history. Sounds like he had a pretty interesting life.
He did. He did. He didn't make like I say, he did. I think the thing, like his son, I think they do a good job of preserving his work. They do a really good job. I think he died like 12 or 13 years ago.
I think it just said, 2007.
Yeah, he died. He died right before I moved down to New Orleans.
What took you to New Orleans?
So my aunt had died in Memphis, and basically I was dealing with like a deteriorating relationship with my family. And for some reason, I basically remember telling somebody that I used to come to New Orleans to visit quite often. And one day I had said I was on my way back to Memphis. And basically, in so many words, I said, when I go back to Memphis, everything is basically going to be black and white. Like, my brain is going to feel black and white, grainy, and everything. In New Orleans, everything feels like it's in color. And my aunt had died. And I was told the day of the funeral that my aunt was dead. My aunt died right after I came back from New Orleans. And one of my relatives said something to me. I can't repeat it because I try, they said something to me to the effect of, you don't care about nobody but the people in Louisiana. You don't care about your family. You care about the people in Louisiana. And realizing that I was pushing 30, realizing that I saw what my grandmother did to my mom, where my grandmother tried to, God bless, look, I'm not trying to disparage the dead here, but realizing how my grandmother wouldn't allow my mom to live her life the way that she wanted to live her life, realizing that she got kind of controlled by my grandmother, controlled her life. I didn't want that for me, so I left. I left for New Orleans in August of 2015. Ironically, it was almost 10 years to the day that Katrina made landfall here. It was basically do this and do something for yourself and don't stick in that city. Don't stick around in that city. And I didn't look back. I just did not look back. And on top of that, I got accepted to a program. I got chosen to speak at a conference at Xavier University.
Oh, amazing.
And that was yes, I got chosen to speak at a conference at Xavier University. But it was more of, I want to do something for myself. I want to break a cycle of trauma in my family. So me moving here was breaking a cycle of trauma, which was going to envelop me had I stayed in Memphis.
I feel you on that one, my friend. That's why we left Oregon and ended up in Canada. My mom was from here, and my dad was from Portland, and it was a really bad situation. In the middle of the night one night, we got in a car and we came back to where my mom was born, and I've been here ever since.
And here's the thing. I'm gonna say this before we go further. My mom literally tried to stop me from moving to New Orleans. The day before, it was so bad. It was like my mom was very emotionally abusive to me. She was very emotionally abusive. And it took me years for me to realize that, because I'm like, okay, this is like every Black family has this. So every Black family, like every Black kid goes through having whoopings or anything. But it was more of, my mom would say things that hurt me. And it used to, like, one time she had screamed at me so bad, I had a pencil in my hand and I just burst out crying. And I'm like 19 years old. I got diagnosed with anxiety disorder as a teenager. And I remember going to my mom about it. I said, yeah, I have this disorder here. It was always, why do you do the things that you do? It was never like, okay, let's figure out why you're this way. It was kind of like, okay, figure this out on your own. It was more like, every time I would get introduced, my mom would say, I'm not a typical 12-year-old, or I'm not a typical 13-year-old, or I'm not a typical 14-year-old, or I'm not a typical 15-year-old. I'm like, what are you comparing me to? And that really messed with my self-esteem. It really messed with my self-esteem. It messed with a lot of things. And it's like, whenever I do photography, I remember showing the picture I showed you, talked to you about, the one I took 20 years ago. I showed that photo to my friend Shanna one day, and I say, Shanna, we were such baby. We were babies. We were like 18, 19, 20 years old, 21 years old. We were such babies when we took those, we were just kids.
Yep.
And it made her feel good about herself. I remember one of my favorite photo shoots I did in college was in 2009. It was these girls named Marie, Roma, Ducky, Libby, Anna, and Caitlin. Okay. And we were all in this apartment complex. So one night I had a GE digital camera. I think it was an A1020 camera. And I say, here, play with the camera. Not play with the camera. So we took all these photos. I took all these pictures. And in that moment, and they were, no makeup, sweats, hoodies, everything. And in that moment, they felt like supermodels. It made them feel good about themselves. And I think that's the reason why I started doing photography, because I want to make people feel good about themselves. Because of how I was raised, because of what I went through. Because trauma is a bitch, man. Trauma's a bitch.
Definitely.
Trauma is it's a bitch. And it's something that, I quit speaking to my mom 3 years ago after she had a health scare. And the things that she said to me really was hurtful. And it was like, you don't say these things to a kid.
Yeah.
You don't. It was like, you just had a major health issue where you could have died. That day that this was told to me, she was like, I want to talk about what you're doing in New Orleans. And she brings up God. Because anytime you tell God, mention God to me, you're being, you're full of it. I gave you to God 7 years ago. And I was like, wow, you really aren't going to come down to visit your son. You really aren't. The other thing was this whole idea that there's buffers between my mom and myself. And I say the reason why there was always buffers, because I did not know what reaction you were going to have. So everything I had to do, I kind of like had to keep hidden. Because my mom was like I'm going to tell you this. My mom was the last person that knew I was leaving for New Orleans. Everybody down here knew I was leaving. My mom, because I was like, I don't know how my mom's going to react to this. Because my mom's a narcissist. She believes that the world revolves around her. So if the world doesn't revolve around her, she gets mad. And I had to literally live with that. And it took me years. It took me years to realize that my mom was narcissist. And it took me years to realize that my grandmother was narcissist. It was something that was passed down from generation to generation. And I truly feared that I was going to continue that cycle. That's why I left, to get out of that cycle and be a fully functioning human being.
To your own rules and not have to walk on eggshells and make sure
you
did everything to appease them.
It was always this thing where I tell people, it was this thing where I had to like be perfect. It was always, you had to be perfect. It was one time I had made some C's and I was in 3rd grade and I had 2 C's the previous report card period. Then the second report card period, I had 2 other C's. And I'm like, if I get C's, I'm getting a whooping.
Yeah.
So my 3rd grade teacher had to beg for mercy to stop my mom from doing this. Okay? My mom does it anyway. Went to the Overton Park Zoo, which is like 10 minutes from where I grew up. Got a switch from Overton Park. Okay? I want you to think about this. Overton Park Zoo. That's on the other side. That's in the middle of the city. I grew up in the south, on like the southeast side of the city. Gave me a whooping. So everything I did, some of it I wanted to do for myself, but there was also the whole fear thing. Like, if you don't do this right, if it's snap 1, 2, 3, or you're getting screamed at, or you're getting hit at. That was kind of how my mom did. And when I decided to break off contact with her, I didn't say anything. I didn't tell my mom, I said, that's it. I'm cutting you off. I'm not speaking to you anymore. I'm like, the door is always going to be open for you to speak to me. The door is always going to be open, but you're not going to talk to me crazy and not get any pushback, because I'm not 10 years old anymore where I'm like, oh, this is just, I can't do anything. But when you're, when you're adult, you can make your own decisions and make your own decision and make your own, I would say your own destiny. And that's what I've managed to do in the last 10 years here in New Orleans.
That's an incredible story, my friend. It takes a lot of courage to walk away from family. It's always nice when you found your own light and you chased it.
I'm gonna tell you the crazy part about when I moved. Um, the crazy part about when I moved was I basically moved in the middle of the night. It was like the Baltimore Colts moving to Indianapolis, and I grew up a Colts fan. And basically, by the time I left like in the middle of the night. By daylight, I was in another state. Like I literally left town in the middle of the night, and I have no regrets. A lot of people, for a while, I was like, I wish I could have did it differently. But looking at it now, I think it was it was this self-preservation, preserving myself, preserving my sanity. And then on top of that, being like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. And to this day, you know, people always say, hey, have you spoke to your mom? I'm like, yeah, I kind of like lie about it because I don't want to be screamed at and saying, oh, you don't speak to your mom no more. I'm like, why? Like, why am I gonna go and deal with someone that basically in an indirect way ran me out of town? Why am I gonna deal with that? I always tell people normalize cutting off problem family members, whether it's political, emotional, emotional trauma, political trauma. Normalize doing that because your peace is what matters the most.
100%. When you got to New Orleans, did you find your groove right away? Had you already found it before you moved there?
Not necessarily. Like they always tell you the first 2 years that you're in a new city, you're going to be dealing with a lot of stuff. And I went through hell and high water. I mean, I got fired from like a couple of jobs. I bounced around from place to place. I was moving. I stayed, I lived in the Garden District, but it was like there were times where I didn't think I was going to make it in this city. I remember one time I just got hired at a grassroots nonprofit firm, and I didn't have a place to stay. I still didn't have a place to stay because the move to New Orleans was so sudden that I basically came here with like $90 to my name. And I remember some amazing people that helped me out. My friends Kate and Dave Gladell, Craig Mordock, Emily Holly. Those people helped me out. 10 years ago today, I got fired from a job at this place called the St. Vincent's Guest House. And it damn near looked like it was going to be the end. I'm going to have to go back to Tennessee, go back to Memphis and deal with the whole life in black and white thing. And my friend sent me some money. I ended up getting another job, stayed in that job for like 6 months. And had she not gave me that money and had I not gotten that money, I don't think I would be in this city today. I don't think I would be talking to you from this courtyard today. A lot of things would have been different.
Yeah.
So it took me about 2 years to find my groove. And the way I found my groove was I quit working in the quarter and I do like bike delivery around the CBD and the French Quarter. That CBD is like our term of downtown. And when I started to find my groove, I started to get more opportunities. But then by around the same time, I was doing photos with my phone. And this young lady named Katie, she was from the other side of Tennessee. And I'm like completely bored out my ass waiting to start my new job. And she said, Ryan, just walk around the city and just walk around, take pictures. So I would walk around. Sometimes I would walk to the quarter. Sometimes I would walk to Audubon Park. Sometimes I would get on the streetcar if I had some money, get on the streetcar, go to City Park, or I would go to the lake and just take all these pictures things that I would see. And by that time, as time went on, I started to learn more about the city and I started to have more confidence in my photography.
It's neat how that happens, right? Like you just, I mean, especially in a city like New Orleans, right? Like it is such a vibrant place,
Mm-hmm.
and you can capture so many different events, so many different things. So you have so much to see, and capturing it in real time, in real life, and saving and preserving moments. Do you have a favorite place to go is to take photos?
My favorite place is the Hibernia Tower, which is located on Carondelet Street. And the Hibernia Tower was at one point the tallest building in the city of New Orleans. It was the tallest building in the state of Louisiana. And the Hibernia Tower has a cupola. If you ever, when you go get the time, look up Hibernia Tower cupola. The cupola was a way for people, for ships to know which way they were going, because at the time, the buildings that you see now didn't exist. They had just the Hibernia Tower. And the Hibernia Tower, um, the cupola was a way for people, for ships to know which way they were going if they were going towards the Gulf of Mexico. So I love taking photos of the Hibernia building, especially that cupola, because it's like there's this canyon on Carondelet, the 100 block. It's in the 300 to 100 block of Carondelet Street, going towards the quarter. It's basically the Carondelet Canyon. And it's so amazing to see all these buildings rising up, all these buildings rising up, and the traffic and the cars and the streetcar and the people walking. It's just makes for good photos.
It's always neat to have like something that's iconic, that has a history, that you can continue to capture the area. And you can always look back because there's going to be things that have been captured in the past, and you can see how much it's changed, and then it's neat when it connects to you like that.
And the thing about the Hibernia Tower is, like I was telling people, like the skylines basically evolved over the last 100 years. I mean, that building was built in 1923. And then right across the street is Place St. Charles, which is like 50, 55, 56 floors. Then you have the One Shell Square, which is at Poydras and St. Charles. Then you have 650 Poydras, which is across the street at Poydras and St. Charles. You have 601, the Pan American Center, 601 Poydras at Poydras and St. Charles. So all these buildings started sprouting up in like in the 60s and 70s. And it kind of like diluted the importance of the Hibernia building. But the Hibernia building is still a very iconic building in the city of New Orleans, just like the Superdome. But it's like with the Superdome, the Superdome is my second favorite place to shoot photos, especially from different parts of the city, because you could be, the way you home in New Orleans is once you see the dome. When you see that dome, when you see the dome, when you can see the dome from almost anywhere in the city, especially when you're coming off Interstate 10, that's like you're home. When you see that beautiful saucer-like structure plopped in the middle of the central business district.
So that's when you feel like you're
You're
there.
home. Like Memphis is different. Like in Memphis, my favorite place, honestly, when I lived in Memphis, I would say it was this place called a Steric building. The Steric building was this old building that nobody ever went in it. Like in my lifetime, it was always this abandoned building. And I can remember as a kid, as when I was doing digital photography, in Memphis, I could always remember just taking a photo of it. It was just always, it was like hovering over AutoZone Park. It was always, you could see it from Union Avenue. You could see it from anywhere in the city and anywhere in Midtown. Um, that was like my favorite, but my favorite subjects in Memphis were just shooting the pictures. I would say shooting pictures of your friends and stuff. And it, seeing those pictures like 20 years later, it shows me, one, how much fun we had, and two, seeing how much we've grown as people. Like many of those people that I photographed 20 years ago, they're now, lawyers, they're moms, they're dads, they're wives, they're husbands, teachers, all these things. And as I said, it was just a way for me to make them feel good. It was a way for me to make them feel good about themselves.
It's good to capture. It's good to keep those memories alive. And it's always fun to go back, and have people that you remember the story. Because, I mean, my history, my life, my childhood was filled with trauma. And, like, I don't remember a lot of what happened. It was that fight or flight mode from the time I was little.
Yeah.
And going back and seeing photos in my mom's photo albums and things like that really had me asking questions, right? And I lost my mom in 2015, and I lost my dad in 99. So I didn't really know or have any outlet for it, right? So I could ask questions, but I had no one to answer.
I'm like the same way because I never had, like, I always tell people, I never really like asked any questions. It was never like told to me, okay, this is why this happened. It was kind of like, okay, this happened, move on. You had an amazing childhood. Yeah, I had an amazing childhood, but a lot of the things that I wanted to do, I really couldn't do because it was more like it was this way of making me socially stunted. I didn't know how to be a human being until I moved to New Orleans. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of the things that I've done now here in New Orleans, I would have never been able to do in Memphis. And that was because it was always, you got to live for this. I can remember as a kid, my grandmother used to get mad at my mom. And my mom would be working, right? So she's working. She's not out doing drugs or any of these things. And my grandmother, looking at it now, I get where my grandmother was coming from because she was wired, programmed that way. So it was just by nature for her to feel this way when my mom would be out and about, at night. So I kind of understand that part. I understand where my grandmother's coming from, but I also understood where my mom's coming from. But when you're a kid, you're like, okay, as long as you're not doing drugs, as long as you respecting the house, as long as my mom doesn't have every Dick, Tom, and Harry come here, why get mad? Although I understood where my grandmother was coming from because that's how she learned. So it's like we treat trauma in the African American community. Many of us treat trauma like it's an heirloom. It's like a family heirloom. If you were traumatized, the next generation is going to be traumatized. That generation gets traumatized, then you're going to be traumatized. And me personally, I'm like, I'm not about that. I want to be better. I want to be better, and I want to break the cycle. That's why I didn't want to get married, because I was just worried about what kind of parent I would be, because I didn't really have anyone show me, okay, this is how you parent. Like, I didn't have that. That's why I didn't want to be a parent, because I didn't really have anything to model with. Like, oh, I have a dad that is emotionally distant. He's okay, but there's that. Then I have a mom that screams at me and yells and, just, screams and yells. And when you try to tell her, hey, you can't do those things, she gives you the death stare. I actually joked about it, and I'll say this and I'll shut up about it. I remember telling the doctor when she got sick, I said, you want to know what dealing with my mom is like? Go watch the Charlie Brown shows with Lucy Van Pelt. I literally no, I literally told him. I literally told the doctor this. I say, go watch the Charlie Brown commercial, the Charlie Brown shows. It's like you're dealing with Lucy Van Pelt. And in a bad way.
That's incredible. That puts it in perspective for sure. I don't understand. Like, I never wanted to be a parent myself either. I now am blessed with 6 children. But I always wanted to do better than my dad did. And that was my whole goal in life when my ex-wife told me she was pregnant for the first time, and I was like panicked and worried that I was going to repeat the same cycle. And I did everything in my power and to my own detriment to make sure that that cycle was never repeated.
And that's a good thing. You broke the cycle. You broke that cycle.
Tried.
But honestly, it's not easy. Breaking cycles is not easy. Going to therapy for me helped me understand. Like, it helped me understand. And it made me not hate my family, but it made me kind of like understand. It made me feel sorry for my mom, because I'm like, think of what my mom's life could have been had she broken the cycle of trauma, of narcissism. Think of where my mom would be today. Because, again, we treat trauma like it's an heirloom, and you shouldn't treat trauma like an heirloom. Yes, it's part of who you are, but you can break those cycles. You have to have a choice that you got to make a choice.
It's a must. I mean, that the transition of time when you realize, like, I guess the way I looked at it was a long time. I didn't speak to my father for 10 years. We had a full-on fist fight, and I was at an age where I was finally stronger than he was. And he hit me, and I hit him back and laid him out. And I looked at him and I said, I will never speak to you again. And I walked away for 10 years. And then one day, my oldest daughter, she's 30 now. I want to say she was 3 or 4. And I just looked at my then wife and said, hey, we're going to get in the car. We're going to drive to Oregon. You have to meet my dad. Like, no matter what, like, he deserves to meet his grandchild. Like, let's do this. I'm not going to call him. We're just going to show up. We drove, we took off, headed down, and remember knocking on the door and watching this man who, Vietnam vet, big, burly, the strongest man I ever knew growing up, the invincible, angry person. And I watched him open the door, and he looked old, and he looked kind of frail, and he had tears in his eyes when he saw me. And he's like, I've been waiting for this moment. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you, but I felt you deserved to meet your grandchild. And we ended up talking and connecting, and we ended up staying down there for a month. And I was like, at the end of it, we were, this father-son relationship obviously doesn't work. So let's just be friends. And then that just started this whole new chapter with him. We had planned to go take off and go up to Alaska to do a fishing trip that we had talked about when I was like 7 or 8. I've had a fascination with Alaska and the ocean forever. And we had started talking about planning it. I said, awesome, Dad. This was a Wednesday or Thursday. I said, okay, I'm just heading over to a race, and I'll call you when I get back, and we'll get it figured out. And I had just made it to my destination where somebody walked up and said, hey, you need to call your mom. She's been trying to track you down. And I called my mom, and my dad had passed away. So it was, I met December of 98. We reconnected. May of 99, he was gone.
I'm going to tell you this. Like, when my mom got sick, my landlord made me go up to Memphis. Because he made me go up to Memphis. My landlord did. And I found out from my aunt, like, my grandmother had 8 siblings. My grandmother just only got 1 sibling left. And I just got off the phone with her. And she called me, she said, Ryan, your mom had a heart attack. And I said, look, I don't want to go up here to Memphis because I'm like, I'm not going up here to watch her die.
Mhm.
I'm not going up here to watch her die. This isn't a movie. And my landlord, the guy that does maintenance, guy named Jimmy, the guy that does maintenance. So he was like, Ryan, you need to go. That's your mom. I know you don't really have a good relationship with your mom, but you need to go.
Yeah.
And he said, I regret not seeing my mom before she died. And if she dies tonight, you're going to regret that. If she dies, you're going to regret that. So I went a week later, I went up to Memphis. And I was like, I'm going up here for a day. But the thing was, whereas you basically came up, you went up and you didn't have a buffer. You get what I'm saying? You didn't have a buffer. I
Yeah.
had to deal with a buffer. I'm like, I don't know how my mom's going to react to me being there. I don't know how my mom's going to react to me being in that hospital room, because I do think there's some bad blood at how I left Memphis.
Yeah.
So I had to call my cousin. My cousin came over, and again, the whole buffer thing. So my situation was similar to yours, but it was different, very different.
Yeah. I get what you're saying there. It's tough. I mean, on one hand, we want to be there for our parents. Grew up in the 70s and 80s. So being there for your parents was, your parents were everything. When I cut my dad off, it was a crazy experience and a crazy time in my life to finally be strong enough to tell myself and him that there was no more. I'm not living through this again. I'm not doing this anymore. And it took a lot. It was a lot to go to that door and knock on it, because I was ready for an argument and I was ready for a fight, because that's what I was used to.
Yeah. I mean, again, trauma's a bitch, man. Trauma's a bitch. It is truly a bitch.
It definitely is. How do you credit your creativity with keeping your mental health in check?
It helps a lot. It helps a lot. And when I say it helps a lot, I know during COVID, there were times when I just, I lost like 5 relatives to COVID.
Yeah.
Like, and we're talking about like, it was like back to back to back to back to back. And there were times where I was just like, man, this is just too much. This is too much. And what I do every year around the end of August, the middle of August, what I do is I do a annual scrapbook. It was a video scrapbook that I started in 2018. So I've done it for the last 8 years. And it's photos of my friends, me and my friends, and everything I've been able to do up to this point in New Orleans. I just did my 8th one, and I set it to Pat Metheny's Something to Remind You. And that's what kept me going during COVID. I always tell people, go and put your phone down, just go outside, just go and walk around and stuff. Walk around the neighborhood. Just don't take your phone with you.
Yeah.
And if you see an elderly person on the porch, wave, even if they don't wave back. So those are the things that really like kept me sane during COVID, during, in trying times. It was a godsend. Like being creative in the time of chaos was always a godsend for me.
That's where the whole fights thing came from, is that I finally found something that helped heal my soul. And that's what it stands for. Photography heals your soul.
It does. It really does. And it's like, again, I think back to a friend of mine, Courtney Conway. She's now married, Courtney Conway Rodriguez. And I remember I did a photo of her, Raven Freeman, Katie Van Diver, and it was Sarah Jane Hook. And I remember showing that photo to her one day. And I said, we were kids. We were basically kids. And I am so grateful. I've been so grateful to do these photos for y'all over the last 20 years. Like when I was in college, I was like the guy that did everybody's Facebook profile pic because everybody was like, oh, who did your photo? Ryne shot. It was like Ryne shot my photo. So I was like the guy that everybody came to. Is like if you needed a photo done, you came to me. You came to me. Like I was the camera guy. And it was something that, again, that made me feel good. And it also made people feel good about themselves.
Incredible. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
They can connect with me on Instagram at Ryne Was Here. You can also like my Facebook page, Shots by Ryne. That's ShotsByRyne. You can also follow me follow me on Instagram at Ryne Was Here. That's RyneWashere. And then they also can check out the blog Shots by Ryne. That's ShotsByRyne.wordpress.com. And also, I'm also a contributor for Anti-Gravity magazine. You can also check out my photos in Anti-Gravity magazine. Support us, Anti-Gravity Mag. That's our Instagram. Support what we do. And that's pretty much it. I thank you so much for this conversation, and can't wait to hear the episode.
It's been my pleasure, my friend.
Thank you.
I'll put all those links in the show notes. We'll keep in touch. Keep doing what you're doing, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful Saturday.
Oh, you too.
Thank you.
Enjoy New Orleans. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Thank you for tuning in to the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope today's conversation brought you insight, inspiration, or just a fresh perspective on the creative journey. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to follow, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. For updates, behind-the-scene content, and more, please follow us on all social medias at LIFE_OF_PHYS. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links and resources from today's episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep living the life of creativity.